Neil Ratner Rock Doc here, as promised, with my friend Stewart Young.
Hey, Neil. How are you?
All right, so
How did we meet then?
How did we meet then? Okay, so let me take you back. What year are we? 1972, was
Yes,
it?
exactly.
I'm going to take you back to 1972. Okay, 1972. I'm working for this rock manager named D. Anthony. And basically, D had a number of groups, and one of his groups that he took care of in America was Emerson Lake Palmer. But he also had many other groups, and he sent me out to do box office, meaning I was the guy who had to collect the money. Back in those days, groups actually got paid in money at the gig, and there were all kinds of complicated deals, so it was a little crazy. At any rate, I was out on the ELP tour, and the tour was a little bit disorganized, so I sort of expanded my job and I took over some of the tour managing because their tour manager was totally overwhelmed. It was a huge tour, tons of people, and so I got in with the group. I started to tour manage, and I got real friendly with the different members in the group, especially Greg Lake. And one day Greg says to me, "Hey Neil, we're going to Miami tomorrow and I want you to meet somebody." I said, "Well, who is it?" He said, "Well, you'll see. I just want you to meet somebody." Okay, so it's before the gig. We're at the Miami Sportatorium, I think, or one of those places, some indoor gig. And at any rate, we're there for the sound check, and there's this guy sitting alone in the front row, looking very much like he looks right now, dressed all in black, maybe a little younger, but other than that. And Greg takes me over there and he says, "Neil, this is Stewart Young." And I said, "Hi, Stewart." And Stewart proceeded to offer me a job basically as the tour manager, and I couldn't understand it. I didn't know who Stewart was. I didn't know why he was there. So I'm going to let Stewart sort of tell you how he ended up there and why he asked me to be the tour manager.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had just met the band. I was working with my dad, who was their accountant, and I got involved in the beginning. And then they asked me to be their manager, and it was something that I was a little surprised about, and certainly wasn't sure about, because I actually at that time I didn't really know that much about them. But I went and saw them play, and they offered me the gig, and I remember going to my dad, who I worked for, to say, "Well, what do you reckon?" Thinking he would tell me, "What are you crazy? All this education, you want to do that?" But anyway, he said...
I mean, you were preparing for a career as an accountant, I would assume.
I was an accountant.
You were an accountant. You had a career as an accountant. Rock and roll was the farthest thing from your mind at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And but my dad said to me, "I think you should do it because the worst thing in life is to regret not having done something." And that was very important advice. And so I was the manager, but I didn't know anything about music. Well, other than what, the music business. And I remember going over to Greg's house and telling him, I said, "I'm not sure that this makes sense. I don't know anything about this, the business." And Greg said, "Well, it's a very young business. A lot of people, not many people even know what they're doing, other than a bunch of crooks who are out to rob the artist blind. But we know your dad, and is honest, and so you'll learn." He said, "Go and meet Chris Blackwell, Ahmed Ertegun, and Frank Barcelona. And Ahmet was like the head and founder of Atlantic Records. And obviously I knew of him, you know, being such a fan of so many of the early stuff they had, you know, with all the Styx records.
So you were a music guy anyway. I mean, in your own life, you listened to music. You liked music.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
But I wasn't into the business.
No, I understand. I understand.
And so, you know, I went out to New York and met with Ahmet, and that was great. And he said to me, I said to him, look, you know, I don't know anything about the music business. It's, no, he said, and he took like a breath and he looked at me and he said, are you sure you're English? I said, I remember saying yes. He said, because we have a lot of English managers and they all think that they know everything about the music business and they know very little. And now you're telling me you know nothing. I don't know, he said. But he said, listen, if you're really being honest with me, I think you should meet the actual people who do the work. And that's what he did. And I remember actually I was dressed in a three-piece suit.
Very rock and roll.
And the tie at the time, and he said, I think you should go, you need to meet the people, like the people who do radio, people who do sales, and the marketing people, you know, and then maybe, you know, if you get past them, you can meet with Jerry Greenberg, runs the company.
Right.
So he called up Mario.
Now, you all know Mario because a couple of weeks ago, I did a little storytelling with Mario, and Mario becomes a very important part of our story, right, Stewart?
Absolutely. And so Mario got the call for Ahmet that he has to explain to me how radio works. Anyway, I walk into his room in this three-piece suit with a matching tie, and I thought he was going to vomit. You know, and he said to me, you know, Ahmet's told me I've got to take care of you, you know like this shit. He said, we got to go and see radio stations, you know, and you can't go dressed like that. He said, I got records to get played, and he said, you need to, you know, dress coolly. Anyway, when I went to, this is another story, when I went on and met with Frank Barcelona,
who was the head of Premier Talent, which was really the premier booking agent for the top groups in rock and roll of that day, wouldn't you say?
Oh, he definitely was.
Yes.
He was, together with Bill Graham,
right,
two of the most important figures that affected the rock and roll business.
Right.
For sure, because Bill, with all the shows that he promoted,
right.
at the Fillmores.
Right. And Bill started packaging shows. He was one of the first guys who actually started packaging groups, and he packaged Frank's groups for him, right?
Yeah, I also remember, now you mentioned that he, yes, he did, but he had represented all the best English groups, from Led Zeppelin for a bit, and The Who,
Rolling Stones,
right,
right,
all this stuff.
right.
Amazing.
So you went to see him.
And yeah, he said to me, you know, it's great, you know nothing about the business, he said, but I hear you can count. And the money, of course, is important. He said, but you need to hire immediately a tour manager. And I said to him, but I am the manager. He said, no. What you need is somebody who goes on the road, takes care of the band on the road, and he makes sure they turn up so they get on stage, because if they don't turn up and get on stage, they don't get paid. It's not good for their future career.
Not so good, no.
So they need to be organised, he said, you know. And you need a tour manager. So then, of course, I met Neil. And he became the tour manager.
And we also became pretty good friends over the years.
We did.
I mean, that was a long time ago, and we're still talking to each other.
Yeah. Well, I remember, didn't I make him? I made him leave his country of residence.
Yes, you
to
did.
To come and work in the Wild West of London.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And that was in the early days of the 70s. with great success, I might add. You know, I was very happy to do that. I think we developed a good relationship. I think the band did well. Now, I think we should tell the story, because it's a great story, about Mar-E Soul. Soul. That was shortly after I met you. That was on that tour.
Exactly.
It was the Puerto Rican Pop Festival. Now, we were in Florida. We did a couple of gigs in Florida. We ended up in Jacksonville.
Was that Sidney Drashin?
That was Sidney Drashin. Very good. Sidney Drashin was the promoter. Absolutely.
Didn't he deliver a whole bunch of fruit?
Oh, he delivered quite a few things that the band had asked for, quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, didn't we get 3 limousines with women drivers?
Yes, we did get 3 limousines with women drivers, and we did get plenty of fruit, as a matter of fact.
So I do remember Sydney for the fruit. Yeah.
You remember Sydney for the fruit?
Mar-E Soul, if I remember, I sent you in a very luxurious
room. Yeah.
I think the height of luxury for you?
So the band and Stewart were very nervous that their equipment wouldn't make it because, as you know, Emerson Lake Palmer traveled with ridiculous amounts of equipment, and Keith had all his organs, and he was nervous. So they said, Neil, you'll go on the cargo plane with the equipment. Now, I didn't really know what that meant at the time, and I wanted to please everybody, so I said, of course I'll go with the equipment. And it was terrible. It was one of these military-type cargo planes. I had to sit in the jump seat where the navigator would have been. Needless to say, there was no TV screen in front of me.
No TV screen? Oh.
It was cold, it was bumpy, and I have a history of getting airplane sickness, and so even with the Dramamine, I wasn't feeling too good. It was a long, terrible ride.
But you're up front.
Yeah, I was up front. I was up front.
I thought everybody wanted to be up front.
Yeah, trust me, you don't want to be up front. Not in that kind of a plane. But I made it, and you guys, of course, went in your little private jet. I think you had a Learjet or something at that point, and you went from there.
No, we didn't have a private jet then, because I remember we went out, I think it was Pan American or something.
Okay.
Then they had the piano in there.
Well, that was on the way back.
Yeah, but we had to get there first, too.
Well, that's true. So,
but anyway, I can't remember so much. But definitely
the way back, yes, was quite a story. So why don't you pick it up from there?
Well, basically, it was on I think it was a Pan Am 747.
Right.
Where they had the big lounge upstairs and stuff.
Right, that was the double-decker.
Yeah. And, a lot of the artists from the festival were there, and the ELP was there, and they had a piano.
In the lounge of the airplane.
In the lounge of the airplane. We just happened that we had Keith, who was pretty good on the piano.
Yeah, not bad.
And there was a guest, which was Jerry Mulligan.
Jerry Mulligan. And I think he had played at the festival, I'm sure, or played in Puerto Rico or something.
He must have done. I don't remember what.
So for those who don't know who Jerry Mulligan is, because we might have a bit of a younger audience.
Didn't he play on
Dave Brubeck?
Exactly.
I remember Jerry Mulligan from Dave Brubeck.
What was the track?
Take 5.
Exactly. Now, Take 5.
Right.
Which was Jerry Mulligan played on it.
Right.
Actually, who was the piano player?
Well, Brubeck was the piano player, and Mulligan was the sax player.
Now, there is a film out on Mr. Brubeck that was done by Clint Eastwood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and in this film, and I think it's available on YouTube and stuff, in this film, Keith was talking about Rondo. Because he played Rondo in the set, which was Dave Brubeck.
Sure.
And they were talking about the different way that ELP played it, to how they play it, right? And which was interesting.
Yes.
And so what happened is, and Dave actually said, you know, the way I listened to it, I preferred that.
Preferred Keith's version.
Well, the band's version. It was arrhythmic. It's like in 5/4 or whatever it was.
Right.
But he actually said that, which was fun. But Keith was a big jazz fan.
Yes, he was.
And so Jerry Mulligan meant a huge amount to him.
Yes.
In fact, you know, being on the plane, I remember Jerry Greenberg was there as well. He was the head of Atlantic, and we were all there, and it was an amazing plane journey.
Yeah, I was actually fortunate enough to be on that plane as well, and being on an airplane with live music and the quality of the musicians, it was quite surreal, as I recall.
Yeah.
It was something that I'm sure you never forgot, and I never forgot, and it was a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, no, Keith never forgot that, and we were lucky down the line that we got to meet other heroes of his, including Oscar.
Well, actually, he took me. I think we were in Chicago or somewhere. Yeah. He actually took me with him to see Oscar Peterson, which was an amazing experience as well.
But to see him play, but he didn't meet Oscar then.
I did not get to meet him then.
Nor did Keith.
No.
Because I remember what happened was that Oscar had a son, and his son was a big fan.
Oh, really?
And his son said, Oscar, hey, you know, there's this band, Emerson Lake Palmer, and this guy, he plays quite good keyboards, unquote, this is his son. And so that's how he heard about Keith. And then,
he got to meet Keith through the son?
No, he then had a TV series in England. So contacted them about doing Honky Tonk Train Blues together.
Nice.
Because Keith would love that. And because his son had told him about it, he immediately said yes.
Wow, great.
So when we did it, Carl Palmer, I remember, wanted to come. And Keith, because it was in his solo album, he didn't want to take the emphasis away. So, but he said, okay. So I think you see Carl playing drums on the video, but I think he was wearing glasses or something. And that's Keith, and that was a great moment.
Wow. Well, it must have been for, Keith got to meet Brubeck, and he got to meet Peterson, and that was a wonderful thing.
And a lot of others. But
at any rate, I think we're starting to go long, and I want to tell one more quick story. We're around Christmas time, and I think Greg's Father Christmas, for my money, is one of the best Christmas songs out there. Certainly the best rock and roll Christmas song out there. And I know you were around, and you had a lot to do with that happening, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about how that all came about?
Well, you know, Greg he wasn't so much a religious person. He was a very spiritual person. But he loved Christmas. He just loved it. And I remember often talking about, you know, at Christmas, listening to songs and which songs he liked and this. And he said there's a lot of, it's not easy to write a Christmas song, you know, that's going to, it's going to have some kind of relevance, you know. And anyway, I can't remember when it was, but I went over to his house and he said, I just wanted to play you something. I come up with this idea. And so he got out his guitar, you know, and he started, you know, playing that, the line you hear, and then he kind of sang it to me. And I said, wow, I really think that's great. And he said, yeah, you know, so he said, yeah, I think it's great. He said, and the lyric was really, you know, different from a Christmas song, but, you know, you get the Christmas you deserve was kind of the punchline, you see. And, but I remember that he said to me, yeah, I like it. I think it's good, but it can be better. And I remember he played it to Keith Emerson. And then Keith loved this song. And he said, I have an idea. There's this Prokofiev piece, you know. And he played it, you know, like the piano.
Yeah.
And he said, and Greg was the guitar, and it works. So they recorded it, you know, and it was a fantastic merger of Greg's song with Prokofiev, and it was beautiful. And so I remember hearing the song the first time it was mixed, and it was an amazing experience. And I think it was just an incredible song. And so we decided we have to make a video. And I had a friend of mine who was actually, he superseded, believe it or not, Neil, when Neil left to do his other stuff. I had to get a new tour manager. And Andrew was a very good friend of mine when we were teenagers.
Right.
And actually, he had volunteered in the, I think, 67 war, and he was a parachuter.
Really?
For Israelis.
Really?
So Andrew had this friend who made commercials.
Right.
You know, so Greg said, you know, we need to I'd love to do the video in the Holy Land. I don't know if the Holy Land was the word he used, but that's where he meant. So Andrew said, yeah, I've got this guy. So we talked about it and we put it together. And they filmed it in Israel. I didn't go. Andrew went, and Greg, of course, went. And Andrew set up a meeting with the mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy
Kollek, something like that. Yeah.
And so met them, and then they found this beautiful place somewhere away from Jerusalem, which is really how you envisage the Holy Land. And he had to go up this cliff with people, and where they were filming him, there's no way that he would have done it if they told him in advance what it was. And if you look at the video, you can see the video on YouTube. You will see it's pretty amazing. I don't know how he got up, but he said to me the worst bit was after he filmed it and he remembered he had to go back.
And of course, those were authentic Bedouins in the video as well.
Yeah, no,
it was as well.
He wanted to meet the Bedouins. And it was looking. He told me the story. I'm looking, and there's nothing there. I'm saying, well, where are the Bedouins? Yeah, nothing. And then this dust came as they came towards you. And then he said it was really an amazing experience. He sat down with them, and talked to them, played a bit of music, and it was special.
Well, I think the song is special. I think he was special.
Yeah.
The band was special. And those were definitely special times. And I think we've talked enough for one day. So...
well, I think I'll go and get a drink.
You go get a drink. Maybe I'll join you. This is Neil Rotten a Rock Doc with my friend Stewart Young. Have a great day, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.